When was the last time your buyer was actually in the room when you made a decision about them? Hi, I'm Matt.
And I'm Jasmine. This podcast exists because that question matters more than most marketing teams realize. Let's get into it. Recently, running an AI search audit on our own website made me stop and think. Not because the finding was dramatic, it was actually a very small technical issue, but because of what it implies for any life science brand that's investing seriously in content right now. If your best work is being misread by the tools your buyers are increasingly using to build shortlists, the quality of that content becomes almost irrelevant. We talk a lot with life science marketing teams who are putting real effort into thought leadership, primary research, detailed frameworks, content that takes months to develop. The assumption underneath all of that investment is that good content gets found. What your audit surfaced is that the relationship between content quality and content visibility isn't as direct as most teams assume, and that the gap between the two is growing as AI search becomes a bigger part of how buyers do their research. The cause, in our case, turned out to be 5 characters at the end of a URL. And I think that's either a reassuring story about an easy fix or a more uncomfortable one about how little visibility most of us have into how AI engines are actually reading our sites. So, Matt, can you please walk us through what you found?
Yeah, sure. So, this is a bit embarrassing, but I ran the Claude Cowork SEO audit on striven.com, something I've been doing regularly. And as we've been evolving our branding and messaging, please do come and take a look at that, by the way. The first recommendation was to build 3 pillar pages: the AI discoverability hub, the synthetic customer page, the buyer persona page. Problem is they already existed. All 3 were already in the main navigation. The AI Discoverability Hub carries primary survey data from 2 of our own exhibitor studies, one at LRIG Dog Discovery 2025 and one at SLAS 2026, and the synthetic customer page as well. These are some of the deepest commercial pages on the sites, and the audit recommended building them from scratch because it didn't recognize them.
And so the cause was a URL slug?
Yeah, so each pillar carried a -striven suffix. To a human reading the navigation, it's invisible. To an AI crawler, that tail reads as a campaign landing page rather than on an authority hub. 3 slugs that looked like one-off tactical assets were being treated as exactly that. There's also a small schema gap on top of that. The pillars were missing an FAQ page and breadcrumb list tags. And 3 of my most important pages were effectively invisible to the AI audience that matters most right now.
So the argument isn't that AI search is bad at reading content. It's that AI search reads a different set of signals that most marketing teams are optimizing for.
Yeah, absolutely. So structure, naming, markup, and relationships between pages. When those signals say tactical, the content gets classified as tactical regardless of quality. So the text is downstream of the classification. If the engine cannot place you in the right category, it won't cite you as an authority in that category. Maybe think of it like Proteus in Greek mythology. He held all the answers, but would only reveal them to those who could grasp and hold him in the right form. Your pillar pages have the answers, but if the bots cannot hold them in the right classification, those answers just never surface.
So the objection we hear from life science marketing teams is that their buyers are scientists doing literature search, reviews, not consumers Googling suppliers. The 18.6% of AI power user figure from our SLAS survey earlier this year, that's still less than 1 in 5 attendees. You're asking teams to restructure their site architecture from minority behavior?
It's worth putting this in context. So the 18.6% figure for a power user, that's somebody that's using AI daily. That was a single event early in 2026. but that was up from 6.6% 6 months earlier at LRIG. Now, these are not necessarily indicative of the whole population, but across, I think they're pretty good indicators of showing that growth in AI usage is definitely on the increase. And we know from other studies that AI is being used increasingly in buying behaviors. Up to 90% of all B2B purchases now involve AI at some point. So we know that those numbers are increasing quickly. We can't tell you right now that AI search drives purchase decisions in life science at the same rate it does in other categories. I don't think anybody has that data. But what we do know is that it's increasing in importance. And we do know that as that importance increases, many of the models that we use to search, particularly those from OpenAI, are fairly lazy and they rely on the training data to answer questions. And so we really need to be found for the answers now because we need to be in the training data for the models that come in the future so that in the future we're found as the importance comes. So we're maybe not necessarily solving for the problems of today, but we're solving for the problems that are going to come because that is a future that is definitely going to happen.
So the ROI case for structural work is partly speculative?
It's not necessarily speculative. I'd argue that it is definitely a future-looking play. We don't know what the ROI is going to be right now. We do know that more and more people are arriving at websites from AI searches they did before. But we also know that when people are looking in AI searches, people are clicking through less. And so being present in that constrained set of results that AI gives us is really important. Rather than getting maybe 100 or 1,000 results in a Google search, we get 3 or 5 brands listed. So if we're not in that named set of responses, what we call citation compression, we're not actually found in AI. And so that's a really important thing.
So in the blog, you describe the fix as minimal, a few redirects and 2 schema tags. But you also said finding it was the hard part. If the signal was that weak, how confident are you that the audit found everything? You fixed what the tool flagged. You don't know what it missed.
If I'm using a tool to find gaps, and I use Claude Cowork and an off-the-shelf available set of skills, most people have access to those now. And running that was much cheaper than using an SEO agency. So being able to look at that and run a test and run it again and again and be able to check that everything is technically sound, I think is worth the time. And then making those fixes, yeah, it didn't take long because we use HubSpot and our HubSpot partner is able to connect up Claude to then go through and redo the schema markup on all 230 odd pages across the website agentically. So I actually managed to set it up so that the fixes that we discovered, one, I could make the changes to the URLs and make a load of changes that way, but I could also go through and update everything across the website so that the schema set those pages up for being found. Now, is there an overnight success? No. But I think that there is a real drive to get this done and get this fixed as soon as we can so that we're setting the foundations for success in the future.
So you separated the diagnostic from the fix. But in most life science marketing teams, the fix requires a developer and a backlog conversation. You know what happens to those conversations. They get deprioritized for 6 months and the team moves on. You have diagnosed the problem and done nothing about it. And obviously, I'm talking here about larger organizations where IT has a separate list of priorities from marketing.
Yeah, I mean, I'd argue that more and more companies now marketing owns the website and IT supports it. But you're right, it is a real failure mode. And the structural fix for this is as much cultural and organizational as it is tactical fix. What I can say is that framing this as an SEO task puts it in a low priority queue. Framing it as a revenue visibility problem. You're not on the short list for deals your best content should be winning. That changes the conversation with whoever controls the backlog. Whether that's enough, I guess, depends on the organization.
So, your recommendations for teams with slow backlogs, in a sense, is reframe the pitch and apply pressure with data from the citation test, but also reframe it in terms of what the value is, especially economic value.
Absolutely. The lever is available to everybody. I mean, if we can show leadership that your 3 most important pages are invisible to the tools your buyer's already using, that's a different conversation than we need to update our schema tags. That's something technical. Better yet, when you talk to leadership, get them to run the test, get them to see the results themselves. That's going to make them really sit up and look. So again, show AI, don't tell it, to quote Dr. Lisa Palmer. But yeah, we've really got to make sure that leaders see what the issue is. That's going to be really, really key.
Yeah, I completely agree that it's important to get the executives engaged in this so that they have firsthand knowledge of what's going on. But for the brand manager who runs the citation test and finds they're not appearing, what would you recommend as their first move?
If they've got access to a tool like Claude, run Claude Cowork SEO skill, but check the URL slugs on the most important pages. Look for anything that reads as campaign naming rather than topic authority. Things like branded suffixes, deep subdirectory nesting, date-based conventions. Make sure you've got clean canonical URLs that reflect topic hierarchy. Those are the sorts of things that are really, really important. We need to make sure that the AI crawlers recognize the sort of content that we're trying to promote.
So, coming back to the whole Striven example, the concept here is the unconsidered set. And you've blogged about this before. You're not losing to a competitor on the short list, you're absent before the short list forms.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think that's really important to recognize that we have to be present to be part of that shortlist now. And so these are the table stakes for getting into that considered set. And that's really, really important.
So, your full blog is on our website, striven.com. And I really enjoyed this conversation, Matt. I think this is a really important topic for all of our colleagues in the life sciences, whether you're a startup or a large corporation.
Absolutely. And I hope you can all learn from my mistakes and my somewhat embarrassment having written, I don't know, however many pages on AI discoverability to have made such a silly mistake myself. That's one of the things that I found incredibly embarrassing when I saw it. But I thought, well, what we're trying to build in public here, and everybody can learn from my mistakes, then fantastic.
And that goes for me as well. I've made plenty of these sorts of mistakes in product management. So I think that's the value of this podcast and the blog posts is learning from our lived experiences.
Yeah, well, I hope everybody has some fun running the tests, and I hope I can spare you all the embarrassment of making the mistakes that I've made. And if you find that you're making others, I'd love to learn from them so I don't repeat them as well.
Fantastic. Well, thanks again, Matt, and appreciate everybody who's been listening.
Thanks, Jasmine. Speak soon. Thank you for listening to a splice of life science marketing. We hope you enjoyed the episode.
If this conversation helped you, the single biggest way you can support the show is to subscribe and leave a review on YouTube, Spotify, or Apple Podcasts. We'd really appreciate it, and it makes a huge difference.
You can find out more about us and the topics we discuss at striven.com or on LinkedIn. Thank you so much for listening. We hope to see you next time.